Hello everyone. I tried to get this video out a little bit sooner. Sorry I slacked off. But as promised, here's a wrap-up video of what I think is the most important from chapter one. I'm going to try to go through this as fast as I possibly can. So, real quick overview of the chapter. What was kind of like the whole point of it? The power problem we looked at in this chapter is what is the balance between freedom and order? Okay. This chapter went into defining basic definitions within political science, like what is politics, what is government. Another big theme in this chapter was what is life like in the state of nature without government? Okay. We looked at some philosophers' viewing of that. So that is what your second discussion post is on. Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Some other big things in this chapter. What is justice? Okay. We go over retributive, reformative, and distributive justice. Okay. One of the last things that this chapter kind of closes out on that I think is important is looking at market failures within government. Okay. Or what government has to prevent. So, really quick, you should understand this definition. The difference between politics and government is going to be the institutions and processes in which um, government makes decisions. I like to view politics actually as us just arguing. So politics exists within government, but it can also exist in other team settings. Okay. Obviously, you should know there are three levels of government. This is kind of like basic information. Once again, those two definitions are pretty basic as well. Um, the one that gives obviously the most media attention is going to be national government. As you go down, you get less and less exposure. However, as you go down in levels of government, they actually get closer to you. So I personally believe that local government is the most important since it is kind of your gateway to getting to these other levels. Okay? So why do we have government? Okay, essentially we're trying to balance this freedom versus order, and this is the power problem in this chapter. Okay, so as you add one, you take away from the other. Okay, the comparison I usually like to make, like if you were in class, I like to compare how your parents raise you. Okay, if you have a kid that is raised in a strict household, they have more order in their household and less freedom. If you raise a kid to with or parents that are a little bit more relaxed, they will have more freedom and less order in their household. Okay. Now the power problem. Okay. How does that relate to government? So in government, we complain a lot because we expect them to solve our issues. Okay. Now we need to grant them enough power to solve these issues for us. Okay. So here's possibilities on what are some things that we come into or find issues with. Okay. We're trying to find the perfect balance between freedom and order. There's no right or wrong answer. It is all subjective, just like your parents raising you. Okay. There's no blueprint on how much freedom you should give a child or how much order you should have. Same thing with government. Now, the power problem when it comes to government, if you have too little power, it's problematic because it leads to failed states, which fosters criminals and terrorists. Okay, an example of this you can look at a lot of countries in the Middle East. You can also look at before El Salvador's current president, they would have fit the mold of number one. Okay, they also El Salvador's president likes to mention that America is kind of heading down this path because we've kind of gone a little bit too far with the amount of freedom that individuals might have. Right? Something once again we'll kind of go over a little bit more into more detail later in the semester. Now, too much power can be problematic because it threatens individual rights. Okay, I want you guys to think of a place like North Korea. Okay, individuals are not able to freely express themselves, and in North Korea, it gets to the extreme where you have like some stupid laws that they have. Is like Kim Jong Un's bodyguards cannot be taller than him. He just banned people within his country from being able to wear leather jackets, which sounds dumb. Okay. They also have all their media and propaganda, which is controlled. So, or all their media is propaganda, I should say, and there's a lot of censorship within the country. Okay. So those people's individual rights are threatened. Uh, in other countries, there is too much freedom, and it leads to terrorist countries or areas that foster criminal activity. Remember, the ultimate goal is to find this balance because we need to find a balance to make sure that government solves our issues because we're trading our life within the state of nature, so being truly free, for this type of structure. Okay. These slides aren't really as important. This is something I already kind of discussed. Now, the Constitution actually feeds into this debate. Um, since the Constitution is not like a right or wrong blueprint, like a perfect blueprint, We have to interpret what the words mean. Okay, very similar to how people interpret the Bible. There's no right or wrong answer once again, but a lot of these conversations over what the language means becomes more political than legal. Now, political once again is arguing in a sense. Okay, rather than it being like this is true, this is untrue. Okay, we're interpreting these words. Okay, the examples obviously I give you is the Fourth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment. Okay, talks about protections that individuals have, like the protection against unreasonable search and seizure, protection against cruel and unusual punishment. But it doesn't define what those actually mean. It just tells you that you're protected from it. Okay. Some of the examples, I'll give you one in the class. Let's do the cruel and unusual punishment. Okay. Um, a cruel and unusual punishment, an example of this would be something like waterboarding. Okay. Now, depending on the circumstances, you may or may not think that waterboarding is bad or not. Okay. If an American citizen is getting waterboarded, you're probably going to think that that is cruel and unusual punishment. Okay. And if you guys don't know how bad waterboarding is, it is illegal even in war. Okay. Also, waterboarding is they put a cloth over your face, they pour water on you to stimulate drowning. Okay. Um, a terrorist being waterboarded might not be that bad of a thing though. Okay. Some people might say that, no, I don't actually think that's cruel and unusual anymore. Or maybe if we bring a pedophile and say, hey, maybe waterboarding actually isn't that bad of a thing. When it might seem cruel and unusual, though, is what if those are just allegations to that person and those things are untrue? So, different scenarios can kind of change our perception of whether we think that is right or wrong. Same thing with an unreasonable search and seizure. Um, in the real world, this would be like police searching your car or your house without a warrant. Some people might not feel comfortable with them looking through their things, whether they're hiding something or not. Or if you're at school, security guard comes in, they're trying to go through everyone's backpacks. Not everyone would feel comfortable with that, whether they're hiding something or not. Some people would say that's unreasonable. Others would say, well, it's okay. They're just trying to do their job. I would they're more than welcome to go through my things. Okay. Now, justice is making sure that everyone is treated fairly. Three different types. Okay. First one is retributive justice. This is a reactive way of dealing with crime or with fairness, I should say, and it focuses on wrongdoing and punishing the individual. Okay. Now in America, it's worth noting, not everyone gets punished the same. Another thing is when um, a crime, we're trying to find its best equivalent punishment. Okay. The biblical verse, a life for a life. Obviously, we have the death penalty here, so sometimes people do lose their life at the cost of the crime that they committed because we think that is fair. However, we use more of a metaphorical sense. Instead, we will give someone life in prison. We'll give them 3 to 5 years. They'll have to do some community service. They have to pay a fine. Now, this aims at trying to give a punishment that we think is equivalent to the crime. It's not always the most fair, and it doesn't always have to be exact. So, two people can commit an assault or a robbery, and it doesn't mean that they're going to get the exact same type of sentencing. This is kind of the reason why we have the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. It also is one of the reasons too why we have like different degrees to crimes, such as murder. Like an accessory to murder or a manslaughter charge is going to get way less time in prison rather than a first degree premeditated murder. Also, it's worth noting, since this is reactive, we are attacking the problem after it occurs. Another issue of retributive justice, or here's a problem with it, punishing individuals doesn't always fix it or make things fair. The reason why is because we have reoffenders. So people who commit a crime, they serve their time or their punishment, and then they go back and reoffend or commit another crime later on. Next one's going to be restorative justice. Now, this is once again a reactive way of dealing with fairness. Okay, two types of parties need to be fixed in this scenario. Okay, one, the victim, because it's fair, we need to make sure that they feel whole going back into society, so we have to rehabilitate them. And then the other person that we have to restore or reform is the person who committed the crime. Now, the example that I like giving is usually with minors because I think a lot of us would maybe agree that, hey, we should try to fix these people and make them feel whole again or make sure that they become a contributing person to our society rather than just locking them up the rest of their lives. Okay. Restorative justice too also is kind of focused on making sure that there's like a root cause as to why that person caused that issue or committed that crime. So like typically a person might not be violent, but they might be violent when they're under the influence of some type of substance. That person doesn't have a problem with violence. They actually have an issue with a substance. So if they go to this program, maybe we can actually get down to the root of their cause. However, once again, This might not always work because individuals have to be very proactive at solving this root cause. Okay. Once again, individuals can reoffend. When we talk about crime policy later on, we'll look at whether or not crime is more a fault of our system or if it's a fault of the individual who commits these acts. Next is distributive justice. Now, this is a more of a proactive way of dealing with fairness, trying to even the playing field, and it's based off the idea that you can spread out resources, both material and non-material values. Okay, the material values are going to be money, healthcare, wealth. Non-material values, power, respect, recognition. Okay, now these graphics give you a pretty good example. Equality, you give everyone the same box. Hopefully they can see over that fence. Okay. Equity, I like to think of this as a perfect example of what financial aid is. Some people don't get financial aid at all, so that like this guy here at the left, because they can already see over the fence. They can afford to go to school. This person in the middle may qualify for partial financial aid because they just need a little bit of help getting over that hump. And there's some people who qualify for full because they need to have access to more resources. Distributive justice is more like this image on the right. Why do we have the fence there to begin with? Okay. And we're trying to attack the problem at the root cause. We're trying to make sure that college, if we're using the college example once again, why is college so expensive? Why can't we just make it cheaper for individuals or even make it free and subsidize it? Okay. So everyone can learn and we can even the playing field at its root cause. One thing to note though, distributive justice, since it's proactive, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And you might also be planning out for an issue that actually never pops up, which is why reformative and restorative justice are used because they're reactive to when an issue occurs. Now, life in the state of nature. Okay. These are the three philosophers that we'll go over. They're pretty important. I suggest you not only understand kind of their meanings behind the work, but it's kind of the reason why we have our second assignment on them. So, Thomas Hobbes is going to be the first guy that we look at. Okay. So, he's a 17th century English political philosopher. He believed that life was short, nasty, poor, and brutish for a few reasons. He felt that individuals were self interested actors, so without government, we are inherently selfish, so it would be more like survival of the fittest. Now, in his book, he kind of analyzes what people would be like without government and why we trade in our life in nature for structure. Okay. He believes that we enter the social contract because we want to have some type of security, because not all of us can fend for ourselves or truly live out in the world in an individual sense. Now, Thomas Hobbes's version of the survival of the fittest is something that we can depict in a lot of our shows that we see today that are post-apocalyptic. So, The Last of Us, The Walking Dead, Fallout, okay? They all kind of give us this example on humans being self-interested actors and more willing to take care of themselves rather than others, especially during a time of crisis. In America, we actually had an example in our lives, okay? During COVID, we actually got to see people act kind of selfish in a way, okay? We had people hoarding toilet paper, okay? We had grocery stores price gouging items that individuals needed to survive. So maybe Thomas Hobbes, even though he is pessimistic, wasn't so wrong about people really being selfish and the survival of the fittest. However, John Locke looked at it the opposite way. He was inherently optimistic, and in his writing, he more discussed what man is like in a life, or what man is like within the state of nature, because he believes we are truly free then. He also believes that humans inherently know how to act within the boundaries. So we have empathy for one another. We understand that we should probably help each other out before we hurt each other, especially during any time of crisis. Okay. Now, this perfect freedom he discussed is making sure that people can do whatever they want or live their lives however they please, just as long as they don't harm another person's life, liberty, health, or possessions. Okay. And he says within this natural state that we already kind of know how to exist with one another without harming each other. John Locke will look at us like animals, like on National Geographic. Okay. These animals, they're born, they already know how to live. Okay. Or if I were to give an example that you guys can relate to, when you guys were children, you probably seen a kid crying at some point, okay? And no one had to tell you that that was a bad feeling. Inherently, you just know I would never want to make somebody cry, and I would not want to go through that feeling myself, okay? That is John Locke saying that we already are like naturally wired. We already knew better, okay? Now, if you didn't have those feelings, this is a side note, by the way, you may be a sociopath or a psychopath, Okay, so it's something I think it's important to know. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he looked at why do we trade in this life? Okay, so John Locke saying we have perfect freedom. Thomas Hobbes saying that we are entering a social contract. Jean-Jacques Rousseau believes that we would prefer first world problems rather than dealing with the alternative. Okay, so the conditions that nature creates are not something that most people would want to deal with. I don't know about you. I don't know how many of us in this class can cook, build a house, protect themselves, and be self-sustainable on their own. Okay, there are groups of people that do this. The Amish do, but are you guys willing to trade in the current life you have now to live like the Amish? Me personally, I am not. I love my AC. I'd much rather go to the grocery store than to hunt for my food and be self-sustainable. So because of this, most people do kind of think like me. They would prefer to live within the structured government and give up some of their freedom. Okay. So influence, obviously we get this natural or unalienable rights. These are these rights that you're born with. We can't take it away from you because they are God-given rights. Next is market failures. So market failures that we go over this chapter, public goods, these are goods once they're provided, we usually pay some type of fee for them, okay? So like you're paying to get your trash picked up, water, PG&E, okay? Even though you might not think you pay for this stuff, street lighting, public parks, drainage system, police, military, it all comes out of taxpayer money, okay? Now the problem that we have is a free rider problem. There are individuals that don't pay into this type of fund and they receive the benefit from it. This is why we have issues, well, not currently why we have issues with immigration right now. We feel that we have too many people coming into the country and enjoying the incentive without paying the cost. Just to note though, there are some of those individuals that are paying the cost of it because they do pay taxes. Some, but not all. You guys, if you guys do not work, are also free riders, okay? Anybody that is disabled, they're retired, are also can be free riders at some point. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that free riders are bad. We should be trying to take care of some of these individuals. Okay. But it comes at a cost. Okay. Think of the free rider problem as the person who gets to the destination but doesn't throw in any gas money. Okay. Now, externalities, there's both positive and negative. Positive is going to be when a transaction takes place and a third or a party outside that transaction, they benefit from it. So this class is a positive externality. I am giving you guys knowledge, hopefully, skills that you can take into the real world. I'm getting paid to do this. Okay. Now, the other parties that benefit from this are going to be society, because you guys are going to, instead of being bums and being free riders in the future, hopefully you guys get good jobs and you pay taxes. Okay. The other side of it is your future employer. Okay. You're going to come in with more knowledge and hopefully skills, so they will spend less resources on making you a better individual for that job. Negative externalities, pollution. I'll just give you guys one example, the Central Valley. In the Central Valley, we say that we produce food for the world. Okay, your textbook talks about how bad oil is, or maybe sweatshops. Okay, currently you can also look at other markets like how bad electric vehicles or batteries are for the environment, or the negative externalities of that. In the Central Valley, though, the producer and consumer agree to a purchase price that negatively affects the third party. That is going to be whatever agriculture that we produce. Okay, so whether you so one negative externality with agriculture is the working conditions. Okay, people working in the weather, the dry heat, and the amount of hours that they're putting in. Okay, now you can be affected by this negative externality and not being directly involved. Okay, in the Central Valley, we have poor water quality. We have pesticides in our water. We have to deal with drought. The other thing is we have terrible air pollution. Okay. Do individuals who buy products from the Central Valley think about these things when making this purchase? No. It's kind of like an afterthought. Just like you guys don't think of those little kids that are making your clothes in the sweatshops. Okay. Or you don't think of the kids that are mining for your batteries when you're purchasing a new iPhone. So Monopoly is the next one. It's a lack of competition within the marketplace, just like the board game. You're trying to make everyone go bankrupt, okay, to run the whole board, okay. Now monopolies do exist in America. Typically, you will see them. You guys should do this on your own free time. Search up how many companies actually own things within the store. So there's not actually as many brands as you think. Good example I like to bring up in class: when people boycotted Bud Light. Okay, people boycotted Bud Light, purchased Modelo. Guess what? Same company owns both of them. Is that truly a boycott? No, because there's a lack of competition in the marketplace. When monopolies occur, it leads to two things. There is not, or the consumers are hurt in two ways. Poor products come out and pricing becomes an issue. So when you have good competition within the marketplace, the consumer is the winner because they either get a higher quality product or they get a cheaper product since businesses kind of have to find a way to bring in their people. What is politics? We could skip that. It's not really that too much important. The next thing is political authority. Now, power is to make an individual do what you want. I want you guys to start thinking about power like this. Individuals can't force you to do something. You choose to do something because you are fearful of something. Okay, so the example that I give here is the gunman. You would give up your car keys, you would give up your wallet because you're fearful that that person would use that firearm on you. Now, this is not a legitimate use of force or power because this individual typically wouldn't have that power over you. The only reason they do is because they have the firearm. Here are legitimate uses of authority, okay? And authority that we see within politics. Number one is going to be traditional authority, okay? Your textbook talks about bloodline hierarchies, okay? Hereditary monarchs. I would like you guys to use your family as a perfect example of this. When decisions are being made in your house, your parents are the ones that are in charge. The reason for it is because we have social structures, religion, cultural values that say that you should respect your elders, okay? Now let's say your grandparents get involved in this, okay? Usually they're going to be the ones that trump your parents because hereditary, they are ahead of them. They're on top, okay? So you would respect your elders. Those of you who have younger siblings, if you're the eldest in the family, guess what? You probably have a little bit more say in your family because you're older. You're almost like the third parent within that household, okay? Next way that you can get individuals comply with or listen to is through charismatic authority. These natural born leaders that people are just drawn to, okay? So your textbook talks about George Washington because he wasn't really the best military commander, but the reason why he was selected as our first president or people wanted him is because he was in the military, okay? He was also one of the few people at the time that was above 6 feet tall. You can do your research on that. Most U.S. presidents are above 6 feet tall. We don't have too many short kings, okay? Now, these people have some type of personal magnetism. They're drawn, individuals are drawn to them. If you were to use an example within sports teams, um, the leader on the team is not always the best player. Sometimes it is just the most well liked. Okay, someone that you respect. Number three is going to be rational or legal authority. I like to look at police here. Um, Based on laws, someone might have authority over you. Okay, so like police might have the authority to tell you what and what not to do in a certain situation. At school, your teachers have authority over you in some sense, not in a complete sense, but there's rules and regulations put into place where you have to listen to them. Legitimacy, not really too important. It just talks about what makes laws more true. We go into this more in chapter two. Citizenship is one of the last things. We'll talk about this once again when we go over immigration, but citizens are expected to carry out some type of duties. Okay, those duties are just making sure you're not a bum within society, you're paying taxes, and you're participating within government. Okay, and to become a citizen, you either have to be naturally born, your parents are naturally born, um, you take an oath. That's pretty much it. We'll discuss this more later on, like I mentioned. Different forms of government, the one, the few, the many. Guess what the United States did? We took all three of these and we just combined it into our own system. Okay. Monarchy is going to be the president, aristocracy is going to be the Senate, electoral college, Supreme Court, democracy is going to be the House of Representatives, and you, the public. Okay. We try to figure out a balance of powers when we talk about each individual branch of government. We'll get into a little bit more detail about that. We'll also talk about this as well. Do we have a direct democracy or representative? We have representative. Okay. We're actually known as a democratic republic. And that wraps up chapter one. Okay. I try to make this video as short as possible. I think we're kind of like just south of 25 minutes. Hopefully these videos help out. I'm going to continue to drop them during the semester for each individual chapter. Some will be longer than others. I think the longest will probably get us 25. Some of them will be shorter. Um, and I'll try to do my best at concising things. Okay. Mind you, I just concise what I would normally go over in 1 week in under 25 minutes. So I think this is a pretty good cutoff. Okay. So as always, hopefully you guys are enjoying the class so far, and I look forward to posting more of these. Okay. You guys have a good rest of your day. If you have any questions about the chapter, you need me to go into any more detail, whatever it is, feel free to send me a message on Canvas or actually use that Q&A discussion post because you might have a question that others have as well. So once again, pleasure to have you all. And goodbye. Until next time.